In this video, Summit City Prosthetist Shawn Brown and our friend Rita cover the basics of prosthetic shrinkers for below-the-knee amputees.
So today is an important day in your life as an amputee. It's also an exciting day. So when the physician has deemed that suture line is ready for pressure and you can proceed with the prosthetic process, they order shrinkers. Now shrinkers come in many sizes. There's also different varieties of shrinkers. Ones that you will see typically from Summit will be an open tube, as you can see, with this plastic ring in the middle, which is movable. One note I'd like to point out that there is a top and bottom. So if you look at the wider aspect of this shrinker, and it's typically the tag end, but if for some reason the tag gets removed, you can just pull these out, look at the profile, and know that this is going to be your first layer to go on. So there's a couple rules about how we get these on the limb. I like to start with just pleating up several inches of it, and then if I can have you slide my way just a little bit, perfect, thank you. I like to keep the knee straight, and I like just to work this up several inches above the knee, and then we want to reflect this back some distance. Does it have to be an inch and a half? I think it's something that you're going to just sort of learn your own protocol as to how you like to do it. Now we're going to bring this plastic ring right up to the end of the limb. We don't need to pull it really tight, but what I don't want to do is create, a pleat down there without contact. So we pull it up in a relatively snug fashion. We're going to invert the tail of this shrinker, and we're going to pull it up for a second layer. Now, at times, I think with every individual will report something a little bit different. The end of the limb can be sensitive, right? So we're just now coming out of this healing process. A fair amount of trauma was done to the limb in regards to the amputation. So we do like to be careful, but we also know that that manipulation can be helpful as it desensitizes your limb. So I would say be respectfully aggressive with it, but if you're seeing any negative effects of you pulling that on, just discontinue that shrinker immediately and get back to us. So once we pull this up, obviously these shrinker lengths are all a little bit different. Depending on your limb length, it's going to create an opportunity to reflect this and come back down for a third layer, which is perfectly okay. One of my rules that I like to see is I don't want to see these two edges terminate together at the same length. As an example, if I were to pull this up like so, even though I reflect it, it puts a lot of tension at this last point, and then if you sleep and you toss and turn, pretty soon you're going to end up with this rubber band down around your leg. I can't say that everybody experiences that, but one way to combat that would be to just stagger the length of those shrinkers. Now, something that we cannot avoid is the last point of contact, and everybody's limbs are shaped a little bit different, everybody's skin's a little bit different in how they tolerate this. The last point of contact is going to leave a red ring, right? And then that red ring is going to turn into an irritation. You're going to want to scratch it. It just becomes an irritant that I understand that people want to, they gravitate toward it, they want to change. So what I would ask is that always be changing your different layers. So if this was where we started in the morning and you adjusted a little bit later, just bring it down a few inches. So we are always changing the last point of contact. And then maybe the next day you pull it up a little higher or you go lower. Now what we don't want to do is find ourselves down around the knee or lower. Really want to get up above the knee several inches, but that is just a helpful hint on how to do that. So again, we're going to pull this up, we're going to come up to about the same height, and then we're going to turn it back on itself and come down some distance so that they're staggered. So in terms of how we care for the shrinkers, one thing we don't want to have these shrinkers see is high heat, right? They're going to lose their elasticity, and that is not something we want to experience. So we typically say machine wash, cold water, tumble dry, or certainly you can air dry. Now we dispense 2 of these so that you can exchange back and forth as you're going through the cleaning process, or certainly if there was ever any drainage that a patient would experience. That's another reason you would go through a cleaning cycle, just to keep a clean shrinker on the limb as often as possible. So with the utilization from the patient with the shrinkers, we look for 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. We want good low load compression on the limb for a long period of time. An example, and I think this catches most new amputees off guard, is just how much volume can come and go in the limb relatively rapidly. So I think patients will look down and say, well, I haven't changed much at all, and I've been wearing these consistently. It's just tough to measure visually how much the shrinker is doing for the limb. So again, 23 hours a day, 7 days a week is our ideal request. Now, everybody has different nighttime routines. Some people toss and turn a little more and they wake up and these are down halfway. Really, just do the best you can. We're looking for just good, consistent wear time to help this become as effective to the limb process of removing volume as we can possibly achieve. So if you see any negative effects as to wearing this shrinker over the next few days through just how it's feeling, visual inspections, feel free to discontinue that shrinker immediately and get with us on the phone and we can talk a little bit about what you're experiencing and we may bring you back in. Some of the things that you could experience is just throbbing, itching, and just things that are going to be new to you. And one of the things that I would ask is if you do feel that things are itching, my first question to you is how are you washing? What type of soap are you using? We like to use detergents that are relatively mild, unscented. I think some people will pick up a little bit of aroma, right, from just the body's moisture, and then they want to sort of combat that with something that smells good and how they clean them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes those fragrances have some residual effect, right? That's what smells good, and that can irritate the skin, not just in the shrinker world, but as we progress into the prosthetic aspect and different things you'll utilize then, the same concept will work with those as well. Okay, so one last thing that we like to see our patients do is I want to see you make an attempt here with me present and replicate what I went through in putting this on, because everything always works well here in the office. It's when you go home and you start to wonder, what did Shawn say? Did he say to pull this tight? How do I reflect the second layer? You name it. Even though we send the written instructions or the verbal instructions home with you, it's always nice to see a patient be able to sort of replicate what I did. This is something I do every day. You're in the beginning stages, or the feel stages of learning how to do this. So if we just treat this like a brand new shrinker, if you could just show me what you've learned. And if I may ask, why did you pick that end?
Because this is the widest end.
Perfect. Yeah, I think you did a fantastic job. It's interesting as we observe the user go through the same process. We see little things that we might not see when we do it, but I know this will come up with you at home when you're going through it. Something to expect is even though your knee is straight and you felt like you pulled everything and all the pleats and wrinkles out, there were still several behind the knee. And that's an area that's hard to keep wrinkle free or pleat free, because as soon as you bend your knee, it's got to collect up behind it. So again, I would just encourage knee stays straight. Your first layer was perfect. The second layer, I think I would just concentrate a little bit more on pulling that excess material from behind, and you might even rub your hands behind it. You just never know if a small wrinkle will negatively affect the fit of it. And everybody's a little bit different in what they tolerate, but if you take your shrinker off and you do a visual inspection and then you see some lines of irritation, and specifically if they're around behind the knee, your first thought there is, did I have a wrinkle or a pleat? And you just focus on trying to keep those out.
Can I get it wet?
Great question. So the 23 hours, 7 days a week, that 1 hour each day is for your bathing, mm-hmm. right? You pick and choose how you do that, but that's really the allocation of time, is that 1 hour a day for either cleaning or bathing.
Your team at Summit City Prosthetics and Orthotics is always here to help answer any of your questions. Reach out to us at any time.